Spider power. Spider power. Hang tight, dude. Spider Rider.
Alrighty, incredible Spider Rider.
Spider time. Ooh, spider coffee. Nah. I love lamb. Maybe next time. Ooh, black spider. Ooh, spider donuts. Red and blue spider?
Oh, hi there. Glad to see you're still here. Sit down, join me. Welcome to the 12th episode of the Shakakapow Christmas Calendar. So, we're halfway through the show, and I wanted us to do something really cool. So today we are doing a very special episode. We are gonna take a look at The Amazing Spider-Man, Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, before we continue, I just want to say that this is probably my favorite Spider-Man story of all time. And also I would say it's one of my all-time favorite comic books. And this is a very special comic book to me because I bought this in the store when I was a kid in 1990. So these are the comic books I bought in Norwegian. So it was number 9, 10, and 11 in 1990. And I was 8 years old, so I was way too young to understand everything that is in this book. But even though I was too young, I really loved it. I fell in love with this comic book already back then. And there was this thing around that time, like it wasn't just this one. You had some, during the 80s, you had some really cool, dark, mature superhero comic books. So you had this one, you had The Death of Jean the Wolf, you had another Spider-Man story that comes straight after this one, Life at the Mad Dog Ward, where Spider-Man is trying to save someone and he gets shot and falls down a rooftop. And then when he wakes up, he's locked up and he's drunk down and he's in this mental asylum. And because he's so heavily sedated and drugged, he cannot use his spider powers. So he's stuck there and the people who found him just assumed this was some lunatic dressed up as Spider-Man. Like, you had so many good stories back then, and most of these stories were in the late 80s. Like, you had the same with Dark Knight Returns from 86, you had Batman Death in the Family from 88, Kraven's Last Hunt is from 1987, You had also some other really cool stuff during the 80s. We had Frank Miller's Daredevil. You also had Moon Knight and Green Arrow, and all of these had the same vibes and the same atmosphere, and they were all dark and gritty, and yeah, and I love those comic books. Still today, many of my favorite comic books are the ones that came out during this time. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's start our comic book review for today. Now, this is a very different story than your regular Spider-Man stories. It's just as much a Kraven the Hunter story as it is a Peter Parker or Spider-Man story. Now, the comic book starts. I'm going to show you some stuff today. I'm going to show you more than I usually do. It starts with Kraven kind of crawling around, walking around in his mansion, nude. And the thing is, this is an older version of Kraven. So Kraven was he was one of the regular villains in Spider-Man, but here he's older, he's resigned, he feels his life is without meaning. So okay, I'll read a little bit of it for you. So here it is. I am Kravinov, the man, an old man now, though few would believe it. And then he pours himself a drink, he walks into a room, and in this room you have an empty casket, and I'll just read a little bit more. He says, I have found dignity, not in the cities, but in the jungles. I have found honor, not in the civilized, but in the primal. I have found morality. I have found meaning in the hunt, but I cannot escape time forever. Herbs and roots and potions cannot rejuvenate a dying spirit or heal a heart crushed by the weight of a corrupted age. I will die soon. I must die soon, but not yet. And then he goes and pulls out a Spider-Man costume from the empty casket. So already this sets the kind of the mood for the story. And then on the next page we have Spider-Man going to this memorial for a recently deceased thug named Joe Face. And Spider-Man goes there to show his respects and to say goodbye. So he kind of goes into this bar, and the people there, they think it's Spider-Man, so they kind of panic, but he says that he's just there to say farewell. And also, in my opinion, this comic book is about death. There are a lot of reflections on life and death in this one, both with Kraven and also with Peter Parker. It's death and mortality. So after that you have Kraven. Like, there's some things, it's also very psychological. There are some things going on in this that I would say is just, it's not real. At least I assume it's not real, because, for example, we have Kraven here surrounded by thousands of spiders, and he's eating them. I don't think this is real. I hope not. But also, like, something else really cool is in this comic book, Kraven has this insane, psychotic look in his eyes. There is something very different about him. And also, just want to say this as well. If we ever get a Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt movie, I hope they choose Scott Adkins to play the role as Kraven, because Kraven kind of looks like Scott Adkins in Boyka or the Undisputed movies. It would be perfect for this role. Anyway, moving on. So, you see Kraven doing this weird ritual, and for me that's just him preparing himself for what he has to do. After that, we see Spider-Man web-slinging like over the city, and then Kraven follows him. And because Spider-Man is in his own thoughts, he doesn't catch up onto what's going on, and too late, his spider sense goes off. But because he was in his own thoughts, he reacts a little bit slow, and Kraven hits him and poisons him with a dart. So Spider-Man falls down, and he sees Joe's face because he's hallucinating. He tries to run away, but Kraven is there and he hits him, so Spider-Man falls, and then Kraven traps him with a net. And he jumps down and approaches Spider-Man. And Spider-Man panics, and he's trying to stall to maybe... He usually always talks and uses jokes or something to distract his opponents and get away. So he's like, "Come on, Kraven, rifles aren't your style. You always wanted to pound me into a hamburger with your bare hands. You've always been the macho man." But Kraven's not reacting. There's something very different about him. He has this look in his eyes. And and this happens. Bam! Oh, blam! He shoots Spider-Man. And then, as this happens, you can see on the last, illustration here, there's somebody digging a grave. Yeah, I don't want to say much more. I'm gonna say a little bit more. So what he does, he actually buries Spider-Man. And then he puts on Spider-Man's costume, and then he runs around and he does some really crazy things. And yeah, that's it. I'm not going to say more. And all the stuff we went through is just like this far into the story. The rest of it, if you want to, or if this sounds cool, just check it out yourself. I don't want to spoil anything from the story more than I have already. I just wanted to give you a feel of what it's about and why it's so cool. So, yeah, there's also a epic collection on this one, which is bigger, and it's got some of the stories before this, leading up to what happens, and it goes on a little bit after Kraven's Last Hunt as well. This is also very good. All right. Yeah, that was Kraven's Last Hunt. I hope you enjoy it. It's so good. If I was going to give it a score, something out of 10, it would have been a 10 out of 10. Okay. Thanks for tuning in. I hope to see you again. Take care. Bye. Coffee, coffee, coffee.
We're counting down to Christmas. We're spending all of our pay. We're getting so excited. We need a holiday. Don't wanna have no problems. Don't wanna see.
Spider guy in Spider House does everything Spider wants. Well, what we do? Never fear, Spider's here. Spiderlicious. Hey, yoink. Hey, Mikey.